A light-engine Van's RV-7 aircraft has crashed and exploded in Russia's Nizhny Novgorod region. Footage of the plane crash has been shared on Telegram channels. The crash killed an instructor pilot and a cadet on board. The cause of the crash of the aircraft, which was supposed to land at Vostochny airfield, is unknown. It is believed that the crash was caused by a technical malfunction or the pilot's error. A criminal case has been launched over the incident.
The biggest source of tension within the Russian elites in 2024 was the purge of the defense ministry. The Moscow Times media outlet recalls that Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu was moved to a different post, and several dozen officials were detained over the course of many months, including 3 former deputy defense ministers. The shake-up was likely conceived as a way to improve the management of Russia's ballooning military spending. In order to speed up the process of clearing out Shoigu-era placeholders, the Kremlin opted for a method that could be described as rotation through repression. This is not a new approach, but the scale of what occurred at the ministry is unprecedented. The purge has not only redirected rent flows associated with the ministry, but also led to the dismantling of Shoigu's entire clan within the Russian elite. Although Shoigu seems for the moment to be under the personal protection of President Vladimir Putin, he has been powerless to intervene in unfolding events. The Moscow Times says that the easiest way to understand the purge is to look at the criminal cases that followed the first and most high-profile arrest, that of Shoigu's longtime associate, ex-Deputy Defense Minister Timur Ivanov. Each wave of arrests seemed to lead to new arrests in turn, as well as generate new charges against Ivanov himself. After Ivanov's arrest in April 2024, he was charged with the embezzlement of 1.18 billion rubles or $11.5 million. That was followed by the arrest of 2 other senior officials at the Defense Ministry, Yuri Kuznetsov, accused of selling state secrets to contractors linked with Ivanov, and Vladimir Verteletsky, who oversaw spending on digitization. All 3 men maintained their innocence, and Ivanov's lawyer sought to get him moved to house arrest on the basis that Ivanov was subject to Western sanctions, had participated in military action, and been decorated. Ultimately, however, none of that helped. On the contrary, there was another wave of arrests in July arising from the documents seized by investigators in April. This time, the men who ended up behind bars were Andrei Belkov, a military contractor used by Ivanov, and another former deputy defense minister, Dmitry Bulgakov. In turn, the July arrests led to another rash of criminal cases that encompassed construction and military logistics as a whole. As a result of the arrest of Bulgakov, security officers detained the head of military equipment retailer Vontog, Vladimir Pavlov, and several of his business associates. A third wave of arrests in August included the head of the war-themed Patriot Park, Vyacheslav Akhmedov, and yet another former defense minister, Pavel Popovu, was close to Shoigu. Since then, the arrests have spread to numerous institutions connected to the former leadership of the Defense Ministry, varying from Rosgvardia, Russia's National Guard, which is also involved in state defense contracts, to a little-known organization, Oboronles, which manages forests on the territory of military bases and supplies timber to the government of the Moscow region. The Moscow Times recalls that in 8 months of purges, therefore, several major rent flows have been disrupted and charges filed against dozens of officials linked with Shoigu across a whole spectrum of different agencies and organizations. Ivanov is currently implicated in 2 criminal cases, and investigators have hinted there may be more to come. Neither Ivanov nor Popov have sought to cut a deal with investigators. By pushing ahead to seize the 2 men's assets, though, it appears investigators want to pressure them to give evidence against Shoigu himself. When given the green light to these arrests, it's possible Putin didn't expect investigators to take to their task with such enthusiasm. But the rivalries between Russia's security agencies run deep, and the Federal Security Service and the Investigative Committee have accumulated many grudges against the military over the years. Evidently, they've decided to take full advantage of the opportunity, both reanimating old criminal cases and opening new ones.
UK Defense Secretary reacted to US President Donald Trump's recent comments about Ukraine starting the war, saying that Ukrainians have been fighting for their freedom and that maximum pressure must be applied to Russia. According to Associated Press, his comments came as a response to relations between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Trump deteriorating rapidly Wednesday, as Zelensky said Trump was living in a Russian-made disinformation space. Trump called Zelensky a dictator without elections, in comments that were sure to complicate efforts to end the war. The Trump administration has started charting a new course, reaching out to Russia and pushing for a peace deal. A shaken Europe is grappling with the new US course under Trump and worrying about Washington's long-standing security guarantees to the continent. Speaking during a visit to Kherson, Norway, near the Russian border, Healy stressed that Norway is NATO's front line, and the region serves as a reminder that Russia is a threat well beyond Ukraine. Tor Sandvik, Norwegian Defense Secretary, said both countries plan to work together with the US to further protect NATO's northern flank. Both defense chiefs insisted that their support for Ukraine remains unwavering and they're working towards ensuring the country is in the strongest possible position going into any talks.
3 years ago, one country illegally invaded another, and since then the Ukrainians have been fighting for their freedom, they've been fighting for their future, and they still are. So whilst all the focus may be on talks, not even negotiations, our concern as defence ministers is that we're not jeopardising the peace by forgetting about the war. And our job as defence ministers is to put Ukraine in the strongest possible position going into any talks. And that means continuing to step up the military aid that we in Europe, alongside we argue to the States, needs to be maintained. Because the maximum pressure on Putin is going to mean the maximum chance that he will negotiate seriously. This is NATO's front line. It's Norway's border with Russia, but what you and we have done as nations over the decades is to stand together defending NATO's northern flank. And at this time, when our partnership is growing closer and deeper with every day, this visit, this region, reminds us that Russia is a threat well beyond Ukraine, and reminds us that Russian aggression is not confined to Ukraine.
Russia has suffered a lot in Ukraine. They lost a lot of young people, but still the nukes and the Northern Fleet is intact, and it's still a threat towards our societies and our countries. So bringing John up here is also an opportunity for himself to see the eyes and the ears and the capacities we have here to look after the Russians. And as John also mentioned, we are going to cooperate wider and deeper together, and also together with the Americans, because NATO in the north is a topic for all the three of us.
We work together in this area of the High North and the North Atlantic, and we also work together supporting Ukraine. So together our two countries lead the Maritime Capability Coalition, putting some of the maritime weaponry into the hands of the Ukrainians and building up, importantly, their strength to guarantee their own security.